Hello, you join me in the kitchen today, and today I want to talk to you about choosing a dehydrator. One of the reasons we started this channel, we were asked by a lot of people for advice on how to dehydrate, what model of dehydrator to buy, where to buy it from, what features should they look for, etc. After we'd given similar advice to a number of people and talked about various aspects of dehydrating, someone said, you guys should start a YouTube channel and just record this, and then you can point people to the video. So here we are. What I'm going to do today, I'm not going to talk to you a great deal today about why we dehydrate. I've done a quick video on that to show what a useful technique it is for people who want to be self-reliant, homesteady, self-sufficiency, good life type people. And there's a link in the description if you want to look for the video on why we dehydrate. Today I want to focus on what you need to look for in a dehydrator when you're choosing to make a purchase. And to help me illustrate that point, I'm going to look at two models that we have here. This is a premium model. It's called a 9-tray Excalibur. And this is an economy model that we've purchased partly to increase our dehydrating capacity, partly to help us make this video. We're going to look at a number of aspects. We're going to look at the power of a dehydrator. Is it big enough and strong enough to dehydrate the amount of food you want to do? We're going to look at the form factor. Does it fit neatly on your countertops, etc.? Is it a waste of space in a literal sense? We're going to look at its flexibility to have the height of its shelves adjusted so that you can dry deep things like whole raspberries, or close together to dry shallow things like sliced garlic. We're going to look at its ability to dry liquids, so to make things like the fruit leathers, which you might know as fruit wind-ups, things, you know, almost like sort of semi-flexible sheets of dried pulped fruit that kids enjoy, and frankly as an adult so do I. We're going to look at things like the amount of drying space available, where the fan is in relation to the food and what does that mean. We're going to look at the types of mesh that come with a dehydrator so that you can dry big things, small things, liquids, etc. We're going to look at optional extras you can buy for this model. And to cut to the chase, I'm going to look at this great model, probably, you know, I call it premium. It's perhaps not quite semi-professional, but it's the top of the range for a home dehydrator. Can we make this nearly as good as that for a fraction of the price? And by the end of the video, I'll show you how close we can get. I'm going to cut the video into 3 sections. We're going to look at the features of the premium model, section 1. We're going to look at the features of the economy model in section 2. And in section 3, we're going to look at what can we do to make this more like this. Without further ado, let's move on to examining the premium model in some detail. Okay, let's take a look at this, the 9-tray Excalibur, what I'm referring to as a premium, high-priced, high-featured dehydrator. It's a 600 watt model. It comes with variable temperature and variable timer on the top, and a handy dandy guide to what temperature to set the dehydrator to for various types of food, herbs and vegetables and fruits and meats, etc. So whatever dehydrator you get, for goodness sake, get one with variable temperature, get one with a timer. You don't want to find yourself at 11 o'clock at night needing to put another 3 hours of dehydrating on and having to either turn it off and try and remember to turn it back on in the morning, or stay up half the night to get your dehydrating finished. Timers, if you use them a lot, are an absolute godsend. So you want variable temperature, you want a good timer of at least 24 hours, but preferably a bit longer. This one does 26. Right, to access this dehydrator, the front lifts off. There are 9 trays. Each has a thick mesh support and a fine mesh infill. Fine mesh is important. If you're drying stuff that small, let's think blackcurrant, it will shrink to about the size of a ball bearing. If your mesh is too big, it will just fall through. So that matters. Each of these trays is about 40 by 40 centimetres, which means overall you get about 1.1 square metres of drying space. If we remove these trays, we can look at what I consider to be an important feature, which is the location of the fan. Within this dehydrator, you can see that the fan is at the back, as is the heating element. So that often referred to as a side fan model. Economy models tend to have the fan at the bottom, premium models tend to have it at the back or the sides. Gives you 2 advantages. One advantage is that if you put something wet in here, like a marinated jerky, and it drips, it's going to drip just onto the bottom here and not onto the fan. I actually put a piece of oven lining paper on the bottom of my dehydrator, and when things drip and you get little crumbs and stuff, which you inevitably will, it's very easy to gather it up, rinse it in the sink, clean it, and save you having to try and sort of get into awkward nooks and crannies to clean in the dehydrator. The other advantage is, because the heat is coming from the back forward, every tray is being dried roughly evenly. There's not, if the heating is coming from the bottom, it's hotter at the bottom than it is at the top. Now the reality is, even with a side fan, there's some unevenness. There is more heat at the back than there is at the front. So to get things to dry totally evenly, it does make sense halfway through the drying process to take a tray out, turn it through 180 degrees, pop it back in again. And that will mean that the stuff at the back gets the same sort of heat as the stuff at the front over the complete drying cycle. Pretty much that's what you're going to get. So you've got 600 watts of power, you've got controllable temperature, you've got controllable time. You have a side fan, you have a fine mesh, and 1.1 litres of drying space. One thing on these side fan models that's not as good, potentially not as good, is if you're drying something very thick, say for example large whole raspberries, what you can find is the top shelf fouls the fruit on the bottom shelf. And the way that you get around that is to remove every other shelf. So in effect, you have a double-sized gap. And that's great, and it works really well, but you only get 5 shelves worth of drying space once you've done that. So you've lost, 40-45% of your drying area by removing alternate shelves. It does work, however. The other thing to mention is that you can buy these, which you probably saw earlier, to go with a dehydrator. These are called Paraflex sheets. At least they are according to Traits Calibre. But they're basically a non-stick drying sheet that you can line your shelf with. Why would you want to do that? Well, as I said earlier, you get things like fruit leathers, which are stewed fruit, stewed to a thick paste. You spread it on the Paraflex sheet, you dry it, and then you can slice it and roll it up, and it makes a very attractive, chewy fruit snack for adults and kids. It also means you can dehydrate things that are frankly unpalatable in their normal form. So rhubarb. Big sticks of rhubarb in there dried, not very nice at all. Stewed rhubarb dried on a sheet, absolutely delicious. So the base unit for a 9 tray manually controlled Excalibur. There are other models, digital models, stainless models, different sizes, but for this model, at the time of recording, which is in spring of 2019, this sort of model will cost you about £250. 9 of those Paraflex sheets will cost you about 65 quid. So you're into 315 quid. Let's call it around 300 quid for the base dehydrator and enough sheets to fill it. So that's what a premium dehydrator model looks like. Next, let's take a look at an economy model and see if we can see what the differences are. Okay, taking a look at a premium model, let's take a look at this economy model. And before I get into the wattage and the square footage and all the statistics, what I want to do is just say why I picked this one rather than any of the other dozens and dozens and dozens that are on the market. And basically it comes down to two things. One, it's rectangular. You'll have noticed on the premium model it was a rectangular shape. A lot of economy models are circular. That doesn't seem to matter at first glance, but when we're doing a lot of dehydrating, and by a lot, several £100 of fruit over the summer, plus vegetables, plus spices, plus some jerky, it's a lot. You've got trays spread out everywhere. You're slicing fruit and spacing it out on the trays, and you know, countertop spaces at a premium, right? Round ones sort of squat like a toad, and there's all these little corner areas that you can't really do anything with, so they're actually taking up far more space than is useful. This one, being rectangular in form, and if you notice, quite a lot narrower than the premium model, tucks very nicely up against a wall. I could actually have trays in front of it that I was putting food onto. The ergonomics work well. The other reason that I selected this over all the other many models that are available is there are add-ons available for this model. So there is a similar form of sheets than the Paraflex sheets that we talked about in the premium model. You can get extra shelves, you can get... Check that out if you're planning to buy an economy model. If you can't get the extras and you subsequently want them, what are you going to do? You know, a reputable manufacturer will sell extras for their dehydrator. So for me, first tip, go for rectangular, go for something where extras are available. Alright, let's dive in and have a look. Let's do the basic stuff first. It's got a digital timer, it's got digital temperature control, so it has those absolute necessities we spoke about earlier. It's a 550 watt model, so within 10%, which is a rounding error, it's roughly putting out the same power and heat that the premium model is. 6 trays, lid lifts off, and there are then 6 trays. Each of those trays is about 40 by 24 centimetres. The 6 trays, that gives you roughly 0.6 of a square metre of drying space. So the 6 trays, ish, half the space of the premium model. Okay, it's a bottom fan, yeah? So, as I said before, premium model side fan, generally economy models bottom fan. So the heating element of the fan sits in the bottom of the device and you stack your trays upon them. What that will mean is that you get more heat at the bottom than you will on the top trays. So halfway through drying, what is sensible to do is take the top tray and put it on the bottom, take the bottom tray and put it on the top, and reverse the order of your trays. Not dissimilar to what I said in the side fan model of turning them through 180 degrees, but a bit more important, frankly, on a bottom fan model. The other issue that you get is that if you're drying something wet, like jerky, drips go through the trays, can hit the bottom and can enter. Now, on this model, you will notice that really the only place that a drip is likely to become a problem is if it goes right through that centre. There's a gap in the tray, it could drop into the fan mechanism. My advice to avoid that will cover in the third part of this video, but it's not insurmountable. Let's look at the trays themselves. Do you remember in the premium model there was a broad mesh with a fine mesh infill? I think for economy reasons, the economy types of Dehydrator economy models generally come with a single mesh, which is a sort of medium gap. It's fine for jerky, strawberry slices, apple wings, etc. Blueberries, blackcurrants, garlic slices are going to tend to drop through the holes. And again, in the third section we'll look at how we can overcome that. So what have we got? We've got 6 trays for 0.6 of a square metre drying space. We've got temperature control, we've got time control. We can, on this, in a very clever way, adjust the height of the shelves. And I'm going to show you that in a separate segment in a minute, because actually I need to zoom you right in close so that I can demonstrate what happens. But it's really clever. I like it a lot. In fact, I've got to be honest, you can adjust the height on these without losing shelves, which you can't do in the premium model. So this is an advantage for height adjustment for drying larger items like whole raspberries. Really very clever, like that very much indeed. So we're going to show you that next. When we've done that, I'm going to do a final segment which covers how to make this a lot more like a premium Dehydrator. So we'll get to that in just a moment, but first let's show you how to adjust the height of these shelves. I think you're going to like it. Right, I've zoomed you right in on the edge of one of the trays. I'll zoom out in a minute and you'll understand why. But what I want you to notice that on this tray there is a fat upright and a thin upright beside it. The fat upright projects up from the tray below, and the thin upright projects down from the tray above. So in this configuration they allow a very narrow gap, which is great, suitable for drying slices of strawberries. If I rotate the upper tray through 180 degrees, you'll notice that the thin peg sits on top of the fat peg, and it doubles the gap between trays, and that is suitable for whole raspberries, larger items that I might be dehydrating. That's incredibly clever. A very simple design, but a very clever idea. And these little pegs, which you can hardly see now, so you can see why I zoomed in, are slightly asymmetric, slightly off centre, so that rotating them either means they line up or they don't. The joy of that is you start with 6 trays on this model and you want a big gap, you've still got 6 trays. On the premium model, you want a big gap, you have to take 4 of the 9 trays away. So this, very clever piece of design. Like that very much indeed. Excellent. So we've seen the height adjustment, very clever. Let's look at what we can do to jazz this model up. And before I start on that, let's just talk price. Remember the premium Excalibur 9 tray, £250 for the base Dehydrator, 65 quid for drying sheets to dry things like fruit leathers on. So yeah, call it 300 quid. Yeah. Entry level on this, 48 quid. That's for the model as it sits there. Let's see what we can do with that to really bring it up to near premium level. First thing, we talked about these trays are just a little bit wide in the mesh for some items. This, very hard for you to see I know, but it's a piece of very fine mesh. It's sold on a roll, intending as insect mesh for things like caravans and tents. It's very cheap. if you cut a piece to size for each tray, you can do that for a few quid. Yeah? You can basically dry anything on there you could dry in a premium dehydrator. Very fine mesh. Don't have to worry about the hole in the middle, the air will still flow through it. You can dry black currants, little tiny little herbs and things like that on there, and they will not fall through. So that solves that problem for a few quid. Andrew James, unlike many economy retailers, sells dehydrator sheets to fit its dehydrator. I'm going to tell you now, that it wouldn't put me off of itself if they didn't. You can get off-brand dehydrator sheets. You can buy the stuff on a roll and cut it to fit. But you know what? There's got the holes already cut. It's not a brilliant fit, I'm going to be honest. There's a bit of a gap round the edge. I suspect again for economy reasons, but they're giving you 6 sheets, so enough to do the base dehydrator for 12 quid. So 2 quid a sheet for this stuff. Honestly, it's reasonably good. It's not as thick as the stuff you get with the Excalibur, but I think it'll last plenty long enough. And I think you'll struggle to get it much cheaper than that, including delivery. So I think that's a pretty good deal overall. Not perfect, but a decent enough deal. So you can get the dehydrator sheets, bring it up, and guess what? You know, like I say, 12 quid for a pack, as opposed to 65 quid for enough to do your premium dehydrator. Now the other thing that Andrew James do is packs of extra shelves. So, one pack costs 10 quid and you get 2 shelves in it. 2 packs brings you up to a 10 tray, 1 square metre dehydrator. You see where this is going now? So, if we buy one of these, if we buy 2 packs of extra shelves, 2 packs of the dehydrator sheets, and a small amount of mesh available on eBay, Amazon, where have you, we've got a dehydrator that has 10 trays, has a square metre of drying space, is height adjustable, has fine mesh inserts, dryer sheet inserts. It's getting pretty close to the sort of stats that you will get for a premium dehydrator. Same sized heat and motor and all the rest of it. You'll always have to be a little bit careful about drips. You'll always have to change the order of the shelves, even more so as you add more shelves as you go through the drying cycle. But, do the maths. 48 quid for the base dehydrator. 20 quid for enough shelves to bring up to a 10 tray model. 24 quid to get 2 sets of dehydrator sheets and a few pounds to get some fine mesh to line the shelves with. All in, call it 100 quid, as opposed to the 300 quid that you would pay to get in on a premium model dehydrator. And that's the sort of message I wanted to bring you. Now, our 9 Traits Calibre, we've been running for well over a decade. It's never missed a beat. It's an absolutely superb model. This, we're going to explore together. So through this season, you're going to watch us put raspberries and strawberries and dried garlic and herbs and jerky and goodness knows what else through both models, and we'll compare and contrast the results. I'm not telling you what to buy. I'm setting out alternatives because, hey, you know, us smallholders, we've got to make every penny count. This, on first appearance, strikes me as a very valid alternative to spending a great deal of money. And actually, certainly I would say to people, don't go in at the premium level. You know, we didn't. We had one of the round models with a bunch of trays and we used it till we wore it out. And then we said, you know what? Yes, we're going to do that enough. It is worth it to us. We're going to buy a decent model. And it was actually a Christmas present to me from Fiona. So I would say always start with a decent but economy model, and if you get the use out of it, then maybe you consider stepping up to a premium model. We'll examine this side by side as we go through the season. You can see more about it. As I say, first appearance, it certainly seems to beat other economy models at least. And we'll see how it performs as we use it. I hope that's useful to you. I hope it at least tells you some of the criteria you should be looking at when selecting a dehydrator. We've got chores to get on with, so I need to step off. You have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.